I'm Sophia, and welcome back to Coming Home to Her. Today I want to talk about something that nobody has warned us, which is how difficult it actually is to make friends as an adult. When we're younger, we're naturally thrown into these environments where you just kind of decide that you're going to be best friends. And as we get older, obviously our environments change and we become different people, and we get into these situations and move to places where you kind of have to start over in terms of friendships. And so today I wanted to dive into everything around the topic of making friends as an adult. In my specific experience, I would say that making new friendships is something super hard if there is no common ground that you're sharing. But the first observation I would say that I have made since moving far away from my childhood friends and moving into new environments where people are from, a lot of times they already have their friends. And I remember specifically a situation. I lived in a dorm for a year during university, which was an amazing time of my life. And one of the guys that lived in the building that I lived in, it was so funny because I remember him specifically saying, I don't want to make new friends. I already have all my friends. I have my childhood friends. I feel complete. And why would I need to make new friends if I already have friends? And I guess that's something for someone who no longer lives in their environment, I was quite shocked by. But it is true. And a lot of people have that feeling. They are in that situation. They have never been forced to be in a new environment where they have to make friends. And so naturally, they don't care. They're comfortable. And it is what it is. And when you are that new person in a new situation or place or environment, it makes you feel lonely a lot of times because it feels like someone just kind of closed the door in front of you, and it may not be something that's personal or directed towards you, but something that they feel in their lives that they're just like, nah, I don't need any new friends. And it sucks being the other person. Other barriers that I have noticed as well can be very much in terms of the language or cultural differences. I have met people before where their mother tongue is a language that I don't speak. And of course, obviously, English is like the easiest common language, but they don't feel so confident or comfortable in speaking English all the time. So that already is a way that they kind of shut you out. And for example, with languages, if you are a person who's not comfortable speaking English, of course you withdraw. And vice versa. If you're the person who doesn't speak their language, of course you withdraw, because it is kind of awkward if you can't communicate or completely express yourself. And of course, there's also the personality element to it. I mean, as we get older, we become more clear of what we want, the type of friendships we would like to have, the types of qualities that we want our friends to have. And in one aspect, it is, I don't want to say unfortunate because I think it's healthy, but in comparison to childhood friends, maybe you absolutely wouldn't be friends as adults. But since you've known each other throughout each other's lives, you're kind of like, oh yeah, but that's just how they are. And it's more of a joke and ironic. Versus as an adult, you're like, ooh, that is kind of a red flag. I don't know if I'm willing to tolerate that. So there's like a whole other barrier and layer to it as well. Kind of diving into my experience about making new friends, I have been on the apps of making new friends. So I've used Bumble Friends quite a lot. And I have met really wonderful girls who I see. And I have also met some people where I was like, no, like, I'm sorry. I wish you the best of luck. And of course, that's not personal. It's just whether you have chemistry and your personalities match or they don't. And the funny thing is, I personally have made most of my friends organically. I would prefer not to use Bumble Friends, but just meeting someone at a certain place. I actually made a friend a few months ago waiting in line to the restroom. And also, most recently, I made a new friend at a workout class. I would say most of my friends that I've made over the past few years have been at workout classes. The other week, I met a girl where I complimented her workout set, and we just started talking naturally, which was so nice and refreshing because sometimes either the person is going to get a little uncomfortable that you're trying or starting a conversation, or they're going to be engaged and want to talk to you. And it was so cute because we became friends and she ended up spending the weekend with us, which was so fun and so spontaneous. And those are the ways that I personally love to make friends. But one thing that always makes me laugh, which my mother reminds me sometimes, is maybe a few months ago, I was on the bus and I was speaking Portuguese to my mom and I was like, oh my God, mom, people are so weird. Also, just because European culture is so polar opposite to what I grew up in. So sometimes I'm like, oh my God, people are so weird, but it's also not that deep. And she's always like, no, you're not the weird one. They're the weird ones. Like, people should be able to have, small conversations or just not feel like awkward and weird that someone said something to them, even if it's just, excuse me. So I always have to remind myself, like, it's fine if you make small talk and someone doesn't reciprocate. It is what it is. It doesn't need to be awkward or, such like a end of the world situation. Another thing that has really worked for me is forcing myself to do things even if it feels awkward. So that can be going to have lunch by myself and then maybe sitting at the bar and then striking a conversation up with the person sitting next to me. But of course, when you are in these uncomfortable situations, it feels horrible, it feels awkward, but you also just need to try. It was really cute. A month ago, we were traveling and we got sat at this shared dining table. And I noticed that there was a younger man sitting next to us who was alone. And I heard his English accent was American, so I started talking to him. And he was so sweet and so happy to have made, new friends and have had, a nice conversation while we're having dinner at the same table. And it was so cute and interesting because he was like, wow, like, thank you so much for talking to me. I probably would have never talked to you or would have just sat here in silence if you didn't strike up the conversation with me. And I think that's also a good reminder if you are that type of person who is not really scared to be forward or have a light, small talk conversation with someone that's sitting next to you. Sometimes maybe that person is more introverted or has a hard time doing those small things. And if you are the person who takes initiative, you make their day. And with this story, it was so cute because we exchanged numbers and gave him some tips of what to do on his travels. And he messaged us such a kind message thanking us for making his day, making his evening, and, giving him that confidence of starting to talk to other people and, being able to strike up a conversation. So also being outwards can really, fulfill someone else and give them the strength to do those things as well. And kind of taking it back to childhood friendships, that's something I have observed can't be replicated. There is something so incredible about the people who have known you, since the beginning of your time. And you can share so much context with them that you can't share immediately with new friends. And it doesn't mean that one or the other is better, but that there is a special bond and a special dynamic around childhood friends. I mean, with childhood friends, they knew who you were, and adult friends know you at this moment and who you're becoming. And in terms of wrapping this up and kind of the honest truth that I want you as a listener to hear is that making new friends really takes time. It does not happen overnight. It's not gonna immediately show up and you're gonna feel extremely fulfilled. It's something that it honestly takes longer than you think. And I mean, with having moved to a new place in the last 6 months, maybe more, 6 months, like less than 6 months officially living here, I'm still in a phase where I don't feel like I have 100% found my people. I do feel incredibly lucky to have met some really wonderful people who I do see on a weekly basis and, have found more of a community, I would say. But these friendships also take time because they're new. And the more you hang out, the more you get to know people, the more you are going to open up your world in a new place. And being gracious with yourself and also throwing yourself out there. I mean, you can't just chill at home all day and expect to make friends. And don't be shy to speak to people. That's a really difficult thing. I also get shy. I'm like, oh my God, no, like it's so awkward. But I mean, you have nothing to lose. And I think that's the highlight and the motto and something that we all need to remind ourselves is that you being you and talking to someone is just you being you. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. You tried and you have nothing to lose. And I mean, making friends as an adult is weird. It's awkward. It's so discouraging and something that nobody warns us about. And a final line to close this episode is that The friendships that find you when you're already grown are proof that it's never too late to find your people.